First off, I just want to say thank you for sticking around, whether you stumbled into my session accidentally or you're just a leftover for lunch. I do appreciate the time. We are going to be talking about building desktop apps with JavaScript. So who is this guy? My name is JD Hillen. I am a software engineer at Garmin in Kansas City, though that will be changing as of 5 o'clock Friday this week. I will be actually changing jobs and going back to doing more creative coding and digital art type stuff with installations and things like that. So getting away from the corporate world and going back to some of my art kid roots. I do have 3 philosophies in life, and those 3 philosophies are code, coffee, and metal. I listen to evil music all day with my headphones. I have a cup of coffee brewing at all times. I did switch to tea this afternoon because I drank way too much coffee this morning, so we're just kind of, balancing it out here. And then I code all day. I am a builder. I like building things. I like writing code. I like making things into existence. My dad was a woodworker for 40 years. I do the same thing he does. It just happens to be on a computer. That's all. So you want to develop an app? Who gets this reference? Please raise your hand. You're my people. Thank you. I put this in as a vetting tool just to see if we're gonna hang out and be friends. So strap in. You son of a bitch, I'm in. All right, but we have a problem. I want to build an application using web technologies that I already know, right? So with that, we can enter in Electron.js. So Electron.js, it allows you to build cross-platform desktop apps with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. The URL is just, electronjs.org down there. So what is Electron.js? So Electron.js is an open source framework for building cross-platform desktop applications using web technologies. And it's not specifically just to JavaScript, but that's what we're after here. Allows developers to leverage their own web development skills and tools to create desktop applications that run on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Electron.js combines the Chromium rendering engine. So if you're not familiar with what Chromium is just the web renderer that powers Chrome. And that is what Electron is built on, is through the Chromium rendering engine. It supports packaging and distribution of applications as standalone executables or installable packages for various platforms. And Electron.js also has a very large and active community, providing rich ecosystems of plugins and libraries and all different kinds of things to help you along with your journey. So a little history lesson. Electron.js was originally known as Atom Shell. Does anybody remember Atom Shell? No? Okay. Well, I'll skip that part then. It's not important. But it was important because it was developed by GitHub in 2013. So then the GitHub team created Electron.js to build Atom Text Editor. Does anybody remember Atom Text Editor? Yeah. So Atom Text Editor was actually one of the very first Electron projects right out the gate at GitHub. But recognizing the potential for the framework beyond Atom, GitHub open sourced it in 2014, renaming it Electron.js. And since then, Electron.js has gained significant popularity and adoption worldwide, especially in the local developer communities, and leading to its continuous growth and evolution throughout the years. So this was Atom Editor. Atom Editor was so cool. Do you guys remember that? It was slow though, wasn't it? Yeah. So this is Atom Editor. It looks very, very similar to VS Code, but this was an IDE that they put out through GitHub. And it was actually sunset in late 2022, so it's no longer being actively developed. It is kind of a ghost land. So that was kind of the first, real foray into Electron.js apps. So now that we're kind of past the history of it, let's talk about the 2 different processes that are actually running when you run an Electron.js app. So you have 2 main processes. You have the main process, which is number 1, and then the rendering process, which is number 2. So the first one acts as the orchestrator It kind of puts everything where it needs to be. And then the renderer process handles all the user interfaces. So, switching back and forth between different UIs and pages and such as things like that. So this separation allows for efficient resource management, security isolation, and enhanced responsiveness in Electron.js apps. So basically what this does, it makes it all work awesome. So inside the main process, that's the first entry point into your Electron.js app. It runs in a Node environment and represents the application's backend. So it is all Node under the hood, which is really great because I'm assuming if you're here at this talk and you know a little bit about JavaScript, you know a little bit about Node, and that's really all you need to know. It works on Node. It controls the lifecycle of the application, so it manages system-level events and provides access to native operating system functionality through Node.js API. So this is actually really interesting that you're actually allowed to use system-level interactions through Node.js. So things like file storage, or creating files, or moving files, or doing anything locally on the machine, you're actually able to do this. So being able to produce pictures or something from an app, you could do this very, very easily. The main process typically also handles things like creating windows and managing application menus, things like that. And then 5 has access to the Electron.js API and Node modules. So you are completely open to the entire Node ecosystem, so you can use any package you want, which is amazing. So, like I said, builds on Node. And Node is actually used to bridge the gap between the web technologies and the native capabilities. So this means developers can use those Node modules and APIs to interact with the file system, network processes, blah, 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 blah. All those fun things. I forgot to set my timer. Oops, sorry. Reset that. Okay, so next we'll talk about the renderer process. So the renderer process is for displaying the app's user interface, so whatever you're building. Each renderer process corresponds to a web page or a window in the application. And then the renderer process runs in the Chromium browser, like I said earlier. That handles all the UI logic, user interactions, and rendering of the application's web content. The renderer process, they're also isolated from each other, so they're not actually talking to each other. You can have communication between the two. However, you do need a, what is it called? The inter-process communication IPC library to make that happen. But it is possible. And again, like I said, Chromium uses Chromium under the hood, which was the open source web browser project. Does anybody know when Chromium first got open source? Nobody cares? I figured. I don't really care either, because I don't know the answer. I was testing you. So Chromium provides the rendering engine for all the different things. And if you're not aware, Chromium is also the base for all of these other browsers, right? So under the hood of Chrome is Chromium. Under the hood of Microsoft Edge, Chromium. They're all the same, right? Does anybody actually use Polypane at all? It's a really cool tool. If you do any kind of front-end application work where you're messing with responsiveness and designs, they have really great tools. It is a paid platform, and no, they're not paying me to pimp it. I just think it's really cool, and you should use it. Okay, so let's talk some of the pros of building a desktop app. So you have cross-platform development. So Electron allows developers to build these cross-platform desktop applications using the web technologies you already know. Awesome. It allows you to leverage your web development skills, so you're basically treating your browser exactly like your app. It's the exact same, 1-to-1 ratio. You get a native-like experience with desktop apps, which is really cool. There's a very large active community and ecosystem to help you along the way. And not only that, but code reusability. And I find that that really important, especially working on large teams where you're constantly stepping on each other's toes or branching off of things that you probably shouldn't be. Having one repo with every single build in there is just, it's so much better dev experience. So, because we talked about the pros, we got to talk about the cons, right? So the number one problem that people have with Electron is its file size. And we'll talk about file size here in a little bit. Because Electron does package Chromium up in every single build, it builds up the file size, right? Again, we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But a big concern is performance overhead. How is this going to affect our systems down the line that we didn't go the native route, or if we're building an iOS app, we didn't use Xtools or whatever you use to build it. It's one of those questions that you do have to ask, and you do have to make a technical decision for. Secondly, there's a learning curve to it. It doesn't operate exactly the way that you would think it would. There are some steep learning curves, especially when you're bundling for different build types. But there's plenty of resources out there to get that information. Again, distribution size, we already talked about that. Limited UI customizations, that is true. You don't have a lot of customization when it comes to how your app runs natively on a platform. You do have a couple options. You have your icons and your like button color and a few things like that, but outside that, you really can't do much. Companies pretty much have their operating systems locked down. And then the last thing is the debugging complexity. Because you're working on multiple platforms and multiple distributions, debugging can become a problem, especially for large platform applications. Does anybody get this reference? Or am I just old? Or do I just like Jennifer Aniston? I don't know. But again, this is a lot of what people say. Oh, I don't use bloated apps and stuff from Google. Blah. Anybody use these? Dropbox, Postman, Trello, 1Password. I love 1Password. 1Password's awesome. Dropbox was great, but it kind of trailed off. Design apps like Figma and Notion. What is that? Zip Terminal thing? Something like that? I don't know. Some terminal app. Communication apps like Slack, Discord, WhatsApp, Twitch. Those are all Electron apps. And yes, even your little precious VS Code, guess what? It's an Electron app. So your argument is invalid. I win. Anyway. So there's some requirements. You do have to have Node 18.15 or higher. I'm not going to read all these, but obviously a few versions back of Mac OS, few versions back of Windows. Linux is its own forest. Any Linux users here? You guys are like gluttons for punishment. I love you guys. Yeah, roll your own. Let's go. I love it. Anyway, so those are some of the requirements. So let's look at this. This is just a package JSON file of a very basic view app. All it is just the Hello World view app. It's not even worth looking at because it's so boring. But it doesn't do anything. It's literally just showing the world, the Hello World. But this is basically what it's down to. You've got Vue, you've got Pina, you've got Vue Router, SAS, Vite, Axios for API calls, because I still use Axios. I'm one of those guys. But very, very basic. Not a lot of stuff going on, right? And let's say we wanted to turn this website into a desktop app. So the first thing we do, npm install Electron. That's it. There are some customizations that we do have to do. So this first one is this preload.js. So preload.js just goes in your root, and then we add this event listener here to, all we're doing is checking the version type of what we're actually showing. So that Chrome node version, it's just checking the version types. Next, we have this main.js file. Now what this main.js file is doing, it actually setting up your application. So in the first, when we create our window, so our window is actually going to be our application. I'm probably stepping out of frame, but that's all right. And then we just set a couple parameters. We've got width, min width, height, min height, and these web preferences that will load that preload.js, right? So you can tell it to load these files as you're building it. Then you've got your get all windows, you're creating the window, and then closing the window. Pretty basic stuff. And all of this is boilerplate. This is straight off of the Electron website. There is no customization that needs to be done. This is not something you have to write yourself. You can literally copy and paste that off of the website. So now that we have our app already taken care of, let's talk about another thing called Electron Forge. So Electron got to be fairly big and fairly popular, that they ended up splitting some of the things down for other developers, and so they created Electron Forge. So Electron Forge is a command line interface and toolkit for developing Electron.js apps. It simplifies the process of setting up and initializing new Electron projects. This also allows you to have preloaded, distributed bundles of Electron apps. So you can be like, oh, I'm going to make a React app that has this, and it ports to iOS. Or not iOS, I'm sorry, Mac OS. Then you can download that and just Electron Forge will just build that project for you, which is a pretty cool feature. So for Electron Forge, again, very simple to implement. We just npm install it, Electron Forge with the CLI, and then we run npx Electron Forge import. And what that will do, it will add all of these plugins down here automatically for Vue Forge. So what that'll allow you to do is write build commands to port out to pretty much any type of build that you want. So we're going to start a new project. We're going to npm init and just Electron app at latest, so that's the default Electron app. We'll give it a name and we'll give it a template of Vite because I like using Vite. So now that we have that, we have this Forge config file. So this Forge config file basically tells the application what versions of distributions do I want to use, right? So we've got Darwin, which is Mac, and Linux. So those are the two that we're going to be porting out to. And all you need to do to run those build commands is just npm run make, and that will build your application. Once you have that application, it will build out in your folder, in this output folder, and it will build, if you're on Mac, it'll default to the Mac browser, or not Mac browser, a Mac operating system, excuse me. And that's that's the final file size that we end up with, is 234 megs for just a very basic, simple web app that does nothing, right? File size could be smaller, I agree, but again, you're using VS Code, so don't complain. Also, if you have any Microsoft products or Adobe products on your machine, you have also no room to complain. So file size is not an issue. But it gives you this executable. Once you run that executable, it just shows the plain Vue app. So now that we have our app, let's talk about customizing our app. So there's lots of different ways that you can actually customize your app. So the first couple ones are just kind of basic web app things. App icon, dark mode, that's built in with Electron. You can do in-app purchasing with Mac right now. You can't do it with Apple's, or not Apple, Windows, excuse me. Keyboard shortcuts, deep links, desktop launcher actions, those are actually pretty cool. you've got your doc menu, so you can customize all of that, native file, drag and drop, notifications, progress bar, system tray, Windows customization, all those different things you have access to make your web app even better. Plus, again, it's all built on Node, so you have all that web services that you can hook into as well. So, all in all, very cool solution. Electron can build some cool stuff. But wait, there's more. I've always wanted to do that. Has anybody ever heard of Tori? Couple people? Okay. So Tori's the new kid on the block. Tori's looking to upset Electron a little bit. And in my opinion, I think they're doing a little bit of a better job. But let's talk about Tori for a second. So Tori is a toolkit that helps developers make applications for major desktop platforms using virtually any front-end framework in existence. Tori was built on Rust, and it has all the CLIs leverage Node, which is really great, so it's built into the Node ecosystem. But one of the big thing that Tori does is that it doesn't actually compile Chromium into your application, right? It uses your operating system's native web browser in order to display your application. So it cuts down on the file size, right? And in honesty, that was kind of the only downside that we were talking about building Electron desktop apps, right? Cool. So, easy to set up. Got to have Xcode. Of course, it's a Mac. You got to have Xcode. And then you also have to have the latest version of Rust in order to run Tori. So there is a little bit of a setup there. Now let's take a look at this graphic, because this graphic is kind of cool. This was they announced Tori Mobile in December of 2022. Now you look right down at the bottom. You've got Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android. Ooh, right? Very cool. So not only can you distribute to desktop apps, you can distribute to mobile devices as well. So, and again, they announced this in December 2022. Well, guess what? Tori 2.0 just came out, and it's available now. And you can download it, and you can build your own apps with Tori and port them not only to the web, but to Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, and Android, all in the same code base. To set up Tori apps are very, very simple. You just do an npm install of the Tori CLI, add that script to your script tag, and run npm run Tori init, and you have your app. That's it. That's all you need. That's all the customization you need just to get something built out. Now, when you build it, look at the file size that came out. Now it's 6.1 megabytes. A lot better, right? Yeah? So let's also talk about some of the Tori features. So we've got custom-built APIs. Like I said, Tori is relatively new. They've only been around for about 5 or 6 years. But they are slowly gaining progress. You've got their GitHub right there, which links to all the awesome Tori stuff that you can do and different articles and repos. We have our custom-built APIs, interactions with Rust, which are really fun. You've got events, icons, window menu, multi-window, certain plugins, not all plugins, but certain plugins have been ported over for Tori. So we're also seeing this shift in the way we actually develop, where we're starting to take certain things that are common amongst all of our different applications and porting them in. I think Will Marple talked about that in his talk. It was like the 5 o'clock rule or something like that. Pretty cool concept. I really like it, but you can start seeing it in some of these frameworks that allow you to build multiple applications all across different platforms. So what's next? Now that we have our app, what do we do? Right? We can't just like stick it out there and just call it good, right? We've got like certain things to do, right? So the first thing that we're going to do is performance optimization. So what we need to do is monitor the CPU to make sure that your app is to identify any potential performance bottlenecks. Excessive CPU usage can indicate inefficient code execution or computation errors, intensive tasks, anything like that. So that's one thing to keep track of, is just monitor your CPU usage. Along with the CPU usage is memory consumption. So making sure that your app isn't eating all your memory, right? We definitely don't want that. And then rendering performance, optimizing rendering performance. This, I think, is just as important as optimizing rendering for the web. I think, in terms of applications, people want it fast and they want it quick and they want to make sure that it works perfectly every time. So optimizing the rendering performance to make sure that those load times are reduced, any animations that you have are nice and clean and don't hog up memory, things like that really go a long way. So if you don't have a front-end developer that also likes to do this stuff, you should hire one. Next, we have testing and debugging. So there's several different frameworks that you can use for testing and debugging. Spectron is one specifically for Electron. I personally have never used this, so I don't really know a lot about it, but I do know that it is built specifically for Electron. I have a lot of experience in Cypress and vTest. I've played with Playwright a little bit, but my previous employer, that's pretty much what we did with Cypress and vTest. So you can still use those tools in building your desktop application. But one of the cool things about doing the desktop application is when you actually launch your browser, you still have access to the Chrome DevTools. So you don't have to get some third-party DevTool program and run some proxy in order to get it to work. No, you just right-click on it and use the Chrome DevTools. It's really simple. Error handling and logging. Excuse me. I'm pretty familiar with Sentry. Does anybody else use Sentry at all? A couple people. I really like it. I think it's a great tool, especially for large enterprise apps. Log4j, didn't that caused a bunch of problems a while ago, didn't it? Somebody screwed something up with log4j? I should take that out. That was a bad slide. Sorry. It was just log4j? Oh, there was an S on the end, see? That's why I didn't recognize it. Okay, so one thing that I learned while working in corporate America is that security is very important. When I worked at Garmin, we actually had an incident that our systems were down for about 3 days. And we're talking millions of people all over the world unable to access any of their device information. And it was a security issue. It was I believe it was a ransomware attack. I don't know the details, but I know what happened. And that really taught Garmin that security is a huge issue when it comes to building applications. Regardless of whether it's a desktop app or a mobile app, it doesn't matter. You need to be in charge of your security. So if you are thinking about building an app, please take security seriously. It's a very important issue and should be dealt with directly, just as important as accessibility is, just as important as testing is. It's up there. It's one of the checklist boxes, so make sure you do it. Sorry, I went on a little rant there. My bad. First, secure external content. So apps should be cautious when loading external content. I think we all know this. Importing external web pages or remote resources, and validate and sanitize all user-generated input. That is a huge deal. Very basic web type things, making sure that you're just kind of covering your tracks. Again, this is why testing is so important. Secure communications. So, of course, we all want everything to be HTTPS. All your external APIs are secure when they're transmitting sensitive data. Implement proper encryption and authentication methods to provide all this. For example, Garmin's so locked down now that I have to put my password and dual authenticate 4 times before I even get to my desktop. That's how serious they are. You know, it's really annoying in the morning when I got to type the same password in 4 times. Like, come on. Anyway, secure native node integrations. So again, if you don't know if this package is secure or not, or if you don't know that it's actually going to be supported in the future, and it only solves like a little itty bitty problem, is it worth bringing into your application? Sometimes you could replicate that functionality with a simple composable function, or something in a library file that can handle that for you and not have to bring in external dependencies. I'm going really fast here. Holy shit. So, I guess in summary, Electron and Tori offer compelling reasons to choose it to build desktop applications. I forgot to ask, does anybody actually build desktop applications? Like 1 or 2? Are they like internal company applications? Yeah. Hobby stuff? Yeah. So the type of work that I do with Electron and Tori, I actually build like art installations or experiential design things, a lot of touchscreen applications and projection mapping stuff, 3D stuff. And it's all built in Electron on closed systems with a server that's physically on location, that only has one exit port, and we can only get out to make internet calls like every couple hours. You know what I mean? I don't build for the web anymore. You know what I mean? By building systems for like physical spaces, and it's a completely different thought process when it comes to building applications, because like you don't just want a website pulled up and full screened on somebody's site. That's just my opinion.
The reason I said and is because I do some progressive web apps.
Okay.
Right? And so once you've done it, it's technically a website that you're running in like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the exact mentality that you need to have to port it to desktop too. And with things like Electron and Tori, and there's a couple other frameworks out there that are doing the same thing. We're getting to a point where we don't have to learn all this native stuff to build things for the web. We don't have to. We can just know what we know and go. I think that's pretty cool. So, in summary, we have our cross-platform compatibility. So with Electron, you can do Windows, Mac, and Linux. And then with Tori, you can do those and iOS and Android. And the cross-platform capability saves development time and effort by eliminating the need to develop and maintain separate code bases for all these different versions. We have our web technology familiarity. We're all familiar with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. At least I hope everybody is. So we can achieve those things with basic web technology, which I think is really cool. Access to native APIs and resources. So utilizing the node runtime. I'm very interested to see where the Bun community comes out. Has anybody used Bun at all? It's a node alternative. A couple people. This is kind of the same thing where like you have Electron and Tori. Well, then you also have like Node and Bun. It's kind of the same parallel where Bun's the new hotness, but it's not like super supported everywhere and not everybody's using it, but it's cool. So I'm very interested to see what they do with their runtimes coming in the future. So again, with Electron, we have our vibrant ecosystem in our community. And then lastly, this is I think the most important one, is the rapid prototyping and iteration. I'm a prototyper. I get wild ideas in my head and I'm like, I don't even know if that's possible. Let's go see if we can do it. And being able to put it on a machine that exactly the capabilities of it, and exactly it's a closed system. You don't have to worry about all the mobile resizing and it's on a closed system. So you're like, if it works on there, then it's perfect. And being able to rapid prototype those ideas is really, really important for a creative process. So with that, I think I will end a little early. I have all my links here. There are repos for any code that I showed today. Just go to links.jdhillen.com. The QR code goes to the same thing. And with that, I think I'm done. Does anybody have any questions? I kind of ran through that really fast.
Yeah, you were talking about Bun. Have you done any research or played around with Dino? The just came out with Dino 2.0.
Not really. I've heard a lot of chatter about it. You know, I've been working in the corporate world, so it's pretty much whoever the big dog is, that's who you use, right? And Node's the big dog, so that's what we use. But you know, coming up here soon, I'll actually be able to expand out and be like, hey, I'm going to do this in Dino and just try it. You know what I mean? So there's a little more freedom there, and I think having options is really good because sometimes you don't need everything that Node gives you. You know, sometimes you just need something really basic.
Well, I think it's a really interesting story to follow because it's Brian Dahl, creator of Node, right? I'm trying to like fix what he views as like his past mistakes. And he's architecting kind of an interesting pathway because he's making it compatible with the NPM ecosystem.
Right.
So he's trying to make it easy for users of Node to transition over and use
I love that.
market share, right?
Okay.
And on top of that, he's trying to stack in like there's a lot of security concern about like NPM packages can be installed and do like pretty much whatever the heck they want on your system. Like he's trying to solve that problem and like eat into the Node and market share that.
That's one of the reasons why I like the Electron and the Tori ecosystems is because they're both open source, and being able to collaborate with other developers that are trying to achieve things or right wrongs, however you know they made them in their past, and then simplify things for other people. I think that's really important. Do I contribute? No, I don't. But I just say that to look cool. So, oh, this guy supports open source. He's great. I'm just kidding. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about different ways of doing databases? I've been thinking about doing a desktop app in Electron or Tori, and something that I really should was like a local first paradigm because it just seemed like it'd be snappier, and then I just kind of have like a background process, you know, synchronize with my server or something like that. But I didn't even know if patterns already exist, you know, whether people just use SQLite or whether they do things in the file system or whether they just pretend it's a website, just talk to the server and don't care how long it takes to load in their Electron app. I just didn't know if you talk about any of that.
You can do all three of those things. You can have a database in your app that syncs out. You can use web services and just sync everything that way. You can also use any kind of web technology that you want. Like if you want to do a bunch of key value pairs in cookies, you could do that if you wanted. I wouldn't recommend that, but if that's the route you want to go, then yeah, definitely possible. I honestly don't have a lot of experience with databases because the majority of stuff that I've done have been just web apps talking to servers. But again, those servers are sitting 5 feet away and there's a direct connection into it. So like it's not bouncing all over the world. Yeah, did I answer anything? I hope I did. Yeah, definitely possible.
And then my other question is, have you had any experience with app stores at all? And I have not even gone that far down the rabbit hole of, I know there's like getting signed and things like that. I still don't get any experience with that.
I personally have never released an app on any app store. Turns out my ideas aren't that good. But I know it's possible. And it's especially with Tori adding iOS and Android I mean, that's how they distribute those apps. They have to get that right, right? So yes, it's definitely possible. Now, whether or not they approve your app, that's out of hands. Yeah.
Do you get any bugs that are kind of like based on the platform, or is it pretty much all your own stuff?
From my experience, it's been pretty solid. Any bug that has come through has always been web related in some fact, like my HTML, CSS, JavaScript thing. But like I said, one of the, let me go back to the, I mean, as long as you have your tests in place, with Cypress and VTest, or if you want to use Spectron, I really think that's enough. Anybody else? Yeah. Sorry, I can't see it because of the light.
You said one of the weaknesses is UI customization.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of expand on it? Like, I thought since you have the whole web browser.
Oh, when I said the UI, I meant like, okay, so I think it's called Rainmeter. Have you ever heard of Rainmeter? It's a Windows application. I think they have it for Linux too, but it's like a way to customize your desktop in any way possible, right? Now, if you're using like, another application to modify the native UI of your PC or Windows or machine or Linux machine or whatever you're using, then there's no guarantee that the UI customizations that you put into your app will actually work in that system. Does that make sense? Okay, so you have access to very basic things. You have access to your icon. You have access to like the color of the bounding box that your app shows up. But again, all of that is customizable. If you wanted to use it, the native dark mode, light mode, you could do that too. But in terms of like making crazy windows and like doing all kinds of stuff, you're not going to be able to customize a ton of things. Does that make sense? Operating systems, especially mobile operating systems, are very, very heavy on formulaic displaying of information. That if you have this type of info, it's displayed this way, and there's no changing it. You know what I mean? So, unfortunately, we have to play within those bounds.
You use like the native OS kind of tool set, right? So if you have
Right.
a form, you have a Dropbox or whatever.
Right.
It looks like a Mac Dropbox on Mac.
Right.
Dropbox on
Right. Yeah. Again, you can still customize all of those with CSS. So, because at the end of the day, it's just a web displayed component. Who wants to talk shit about Tailwind? I'm just kidding. No, but that's it. Thank you guys for coming. I'll give you some extra time so you can get to the next session. But I'll be around for the rest of the day if anybody wants to talk shop or anything. I'm JD. Thanks.